Welcome to another edition of WRAL Triangle and Two. I'm Mark Bergin. He's Luis Fernandez, and we've got the Gator Bowl. The Duke Blue Devils going up against the Ole Miss Rebels on January the 2nd. Who knew that Duke would be the best football team in the Triangle this past season? But Luis, I don't know who's playing quarterback for the Blue Devils because Maalik Murphy is transferring along with Grayson Loftis.
Yeah, two of their primary starters are the past two seasons, right? Maalik Murphy starting every game this year, Grayson Loftis finishing that stretch when Riley Leonard was hurt, both entering the transfer portal. You've got Darian Mensah, the Tulane redshirt freshman transfer quarterback coming in, but obviously he's not going to be involved. So who's it going to be? Henry Belin, Mark Bergin.
We're back. It comes full circle. And you know what? He's going to get his opportunity.
He is. And I think for those of you who are not as familiar with Duke football, let me catch you up to speed on Henry Belin and like his journey, right? He initially started the first game post Riley Leonard injury. It was against NC State, I believe. Or I believe that was the first game after the Riley Leonard injury. And so he comes in, and it was a really odd situation. He threw the ball 12 times. Had 4 completions, had 2 touchdowns. And, Duke just dominated the game against NC State. Now, he didn't play the rest of the season. It was Grayson Loftis who kind of came in and really went from there. Now, part of that was because he was dealing with some major injuries, especially from a shoulder perspective. He was kind of trying to grit it out and tough it out for the Blue Devils. And, even through the spring, he wasn't really even healthy. So now for Henry Belin to get his opportunity, I think it's really cool. He's spoken a lot about just kind of like the commitment that he's felt from everyone around him. Family, obviously, friends, obviously, also teammates, the coaching staff, just to be able to get to this point. It's one of those things where you're like, sport's cool. Because, you just get this opportunity where someone who has really, had a long battle getting back to a point where he's even healthy again, getting this opportunity on a huge stage against Ole Miss.
Yes, you set the stage very well, my friend Luis Fernandez. And I am not anti-transfer portal, so please don't misconstrue what I'm about to say. But this is what happens when you persevere and then you get another shot and you get another opportunity and you stick with it. And I'm excited because the stage is set. You're talking about ACC against the big, bad, mighty SEC. An Ole Miss team with Jaxson Dart, who led the SEC in passing yards, and Lane Kiffin, the head coach, high-flying offense. You're going to have your opportunity to get your second double-digit win season in program history.
Ever.
So it's a heck of an opportunity for Henry Belin, Manny Fernandez, and the Duke Blue Devils.
Manny Fernandez?
I knew this was going to happen. No.
Shout out to the Dolphins.
Man. Manny Diaz. We've been joking this all season long. I said this is going to happen at some point where I call Manny Diaz Manny Fernandez.
Shout out to the Dolphins, great defensive lineman, and my family. No, that's okay. It happens. What's so like, here's the thing about this bowl game, right? Well, any bowl game after New Year's just historically is a big deal, right? The Gator Bowl, this is Duke's first time in the Gator Bowl as a program, I believe. And it's a big deal. One thing that the players have said kind of leading up to this is like, they understand that this is an opportunity for them. This is a spotlight for them. They want to prove that they belong. They were 9-3 this season. And a lot of people, even myself included, are kind of, they're 9-3, but who have they beaten, right? Who was their best win against? UConn, NC State, UNC. They did compete and play very close games against SMU, losing in overtime. They had the lead against Miami in the fourth quarter, right? So they had these opportunities. They almost came back against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. So they had these opportunities against the better ACC teams on their schedule. So this is kind of, once again, an Ole Miss team that, if not for kind of throwing up over themselves the past, just a couple of moments throughout the course of the season, would be in the playoffs. So
when you put it like
this is to show that if you were Duke the Duke Blue Devils. This is to show that you belong at the big boys table, that you deserve to be looked at as a team that can compete for ACC titles and a spot in the college football playoff.
We talked about this some in the NC State Bowl preview about tenure. Manny Diaz is going to be the second most tenured coach in the state of North Carolina behind Dave Dornan. Manny Diaz is going into year 2 in the 2025 season. So a lot of changeover when it comes to the head coaches in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah. And Diaz, I think if not for SMU finishing with the record that they did and getting into the playoff in their first year in the ACC, I think Diaz is getting consideration for a coach of the year. What he's done with the Blue Devils, part of it is, thank you, Mike Elko, for the success that he has set up for Duke. But I think he has taken that and built on that momentum and continued to move them forward. So it's, you got to give your, caps off to what Duke was able to accomplish this season from a football perspective. And this is an opportunity to end the season on an exclamation point. You want to talk about momentum. If Duke were to beat Ole Miss in this game, they'd be getting major praise and they would be looked at very seriously moving into the 2025-2026 season.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what that looks like when we're a full year into Diaz's regime, to where right now you can point to, it's like, well, he's got Elko's guys and Elko's recruits and how many guys who have been drafted up front at the line of scrimmage where the game is played in the trenches, what that looks like in year 2 of Manny Diaz, what that looks like in year 3 of Manny Diaz. So I'm really excited to see that, of what this means in this specific bowl game, but then going into next season and beyond. Can you continue to build off the recent success that you've had of not just the end results of the wins? I look at even a year ago, College Game Day coming to Durham for football. Yeah. Something we haven't seen before. So you mentioned the word momentum, that you hit the nail on the head right there, Lewis.
Yeah, no, for sure. And according to Duke, they had their best signing class ever this year.
Yep.
So, and I think they're retaining so much of what has made them great, from the strength and conditioning program to their, Jonathan Brewer and Jonathan Packey, their coordinators. Like, everything is trending in the right direction for Duke. Now it's just about continuing to take advantage of that. One thing about the actual game that I just want to kind of make sure I put on people's radar here, for those of you who may not be as familiar with like what Henry Belin could do or Duke football in general, Henry Belin would come in throughout the course of the season as kind of like a change of pace quarterback almost. Would throw it a couple of times, but primarily was able to use his legs. And that's one thing that, Maalik Murphy had a great season at Duke, set a program record for passing touchdowns in a season, but he, didn't really have much scrambling ability, or at least that he showed off. So that's something that, like, if you're Ole Miss preparing for this game, you have to take into account Henry Belin's ability to run. And that's one of those things that, it could tweak what they're able to present, which could give them an advantage against the Rebels, especially early on in that game.
It's such an important component of football now, making a defense play an honest 11 on 11, because you have an additional blocker with the quarterback's ability to run the ball. So that's very well stated. Any final thoughts here, Lewis, before we wrap up?
No, just really, I think Duke's seasonal success does not depend on the result of this bowl game, right? I think they've had enough success this regular season to be like, heck yeah. I mean, I remember seeing previews like, if Duke would be like, I don't remember what the Vegas win total was, but it was like, hey, if Duke qualifies for a bowl, that's a huge step for them, under Manny Diaz. And here they are, not just qualifying for a bowl, but qualifying for a good bowl with a potential to get 10 wins for just the second time in program history, like you said earlier, Mark. I mean, I think that's, if really cannot emphasize enough how big of a deal it would be if the Blue Devils are able to beat Ole Miss in this game.
Yeah, let me flex your muscles a little bit too. You mentioned the strengthening and conditioning staff, the House of Feely over at Duke. I know he's their strength and conditioning coordinator.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's a carryover from the Elko regime. And, longtime kind of friend and coworker with Manny Diaz. So I did a story back with him. It was before the season got started. So free to hop on WRAL Sports Fan, check that out. But they've built this kind of strong foundation that I think is a part of the reason why Duke football had not been as successful in the past. Whether it be the strength and conditioning program or the talent they were bringing in. So they've kind of shorn up some of those components, and that is able to elevate their floor. So, we'll be curious to see what that looks like against a SEC team that, like I said, was just a few plays away from being in the college football playoff.
Absolutely. He's Luis Fernandez. I'm Mark Bergin. January the 2nd, Jacksonville, Florida. We'll see. Maybe Manny Fernandez will travel from Florida to go see Manny Diaz and the Duke Blue Devils.
I thought you did it again for a second.
No. I'm making fun of myself. I'm Mark Bergin. He's Luis Fernandez. We'll see you next time on WRAL Triangle and Two. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.